Welcome to Zen and the Art of Real Estate Investing. What if you could learn from experienced real estate investors, find out what got them to where they are now, get insight into their daily habits, and take these insights to inspire your own growth? Each week, Jonathan Greene shares an in-depth look at the mindful approach to real estate investing. Jonathan is a lifelong real estate investor, advisor, and coach, as well as the founder and team leader of Streamlined Properties. Whether you're looking to start from scratch, get to the next level, or just for a straightforward and honest approach to real estate investing, Jonathan seeks to provide a free mentorship program you can take with you anywhere. Now, here's Jonathan.
We did it. Episode 100 coming at you. I could not have done it without your help. Thank you so much for listening this whole way to get us to episode 100. We started at one episode a week. We migrated to 2 episodes a week, and that's where we're staying Mondays and Thursdays. Those will be in your inbox if you're following the podcast. Hint, hint. And it would be great if you could leave us a 5-star review. Do it in celebration of the 100th episode, which is a surprise episode because I'm the guest. I brought my very good friend and former guest on the show, Alyssa Holbrook, on to interview me. We didn't pre-plan this thing, and it turned into the mindful approach to real estate investing, which is the entire reason that I started this podcast. This is a different episode. We really don't talk about real estate that much. We talk about mindfulness, mindset, real estate coaching, and how getting yourself set up for business is the best way to do business. We also talk about the real estate industry and things that we think would help. I think this is going to be a show that's really going to help you in 2024. I hope you enjoy it. I appreciate Alyssa so much. You'll see why right now. Let's do it. Episode 100. This is episode 100 of Zen and the Art of Real Estate Investing with my guest. Wait a minute. I'm the guest. Alyssa Holbrook is actually the host today. Alyssa, take it away. Why am I doing this?
I'm so excited to be the host and interview you for your 100th episode. So let's start it off with your thoughts about mindset. When people think of mindset, I see certain things that they think of. But when you think of mindset, I think it's slightly different than the average person. Tell me about your unique take on mindset.
I think everybody knows why I brought you to host this show then. Well, when I think about mindset, the way that other people look at it, I think of like kind of hustle and grind culture, that's so popular now that everybody thinks they have to do more, work harder, work more hours, where the way that I look at it is the whole reason I want to perfect my mindset as it relates to real estate investing so I can work less hours. All the people who say, I want to get into real estate investing so I can have financial freedom. And then they, start trying to flip 3 houses at the same time. Like then they realize they're working, 100 hours a week on the side. So I think the idea of mindset isn't really collectively involved in real estate investing. And that's kind of why I started the podcast. I hope I could change that. And then when we met, we're like, ooh, we like the same things. Like, let's just talk about mindset. But don't you think, now we've been talking about it so much. What's your view on the same thing there? Where are people getting hung up on mindset, do you think?
Yeah, the main thing that I see is like kind of that toxic positivity. Like I'm just going to almost like gaslight myself. Like I have this perspective, I have this view, and instead I'm not going to believe that that's important or valid. And so when I think mindset, I think like going inward with your emotions and actually believing yourself. Do you feel like you do that? I think you do that on a daily basis with your meditations, but tell me a little bit more about that practice for you, like how you apply mindset in your daily life.
Yeah, I just think if I look back at like my first career, which was as an attorney, I was like just killing myself working like 100-hour weeks for the government for very, very low pay. But I really enjoyed the job. But my mindset wasn't really focused. It was just like we were saying, like, work, work, work. And I wasn't self-aware. And I think that's a big part of it as well. I don't think I really became fully self-aware into my, 40s because I just needed to kind of get centered. And the more self-aware I am, the more mindful I am about the way that I do business. And I think that helps. Real estate can be looked at as a cutthroat business, but what most of us have learned, and if you look back at the 100 episodes, the overriding theme is real estate is all about relationships. It's not about one deal or really trying to, get a great deal for someone because they're, you have to bail them out of a situation. Like, what if it can be a win-win for everyone? And if we started to adjust and start looking how we can work together, which again is an overriding theme of all 100 episodes, I think real estate as a whole would be just a lot better served if it was more transparent, more mindful, and more cooperative and collaborative instead of what people look at it as competitive.
Oh, that's so interesting that you see it that way, like everyone working together. And I really feel like you live that with how you emphasize networking. So tell me a little bit more about the value of understanding people and building relationships within real estate. I truly don't know anyone who does that more than you. Like that is...
But that's crazy though,
amazing.
Because like I don't even like to leave the house.
Yeah.
And we found that out because you helped me get through BPCon because I don't like crowds and I don't like spaces, and we were able to go to a lot of the stuff together. But I think the reason why I'm good at networking and building that into as a business is because I actually care. And I've never had a desperation principle, which helps. I've been fortunate. So I didn't have to, say like, well, I need to get the money from this deal. Like if I don't get the money from a deal in a timely fashion, I'm going to be okay. So that makes it a little bit easier for me. But I think if more people were focused on doing things the right way, more money would come, and then more money would come after that. And it's a short-term thinking that is really killing real estate. And I think because I never wanted to get something from networking, like sure, as an agent, I'd like to get some deals, but I'll never ask anyone for that. I remember when I first got licensed, somebody said, oh, put in your signature, hey, I'm here for all referrals if you're looking to buy, sell, or invest. And I'm like, I mean, that sounds stupid. What? Like then they know it's not just to them, and I'm begging, and I don't want to beg for business. I want to earn business by, doing it the right way. And I think that's been my way in on-market real estate and in investing. When I hold a meetup or when I have a podcast, I don't have a gain, from the show. I've now, interviewed 99, including you, 99 real estate investors. Well, the first 6 weren't people. Sure. So 93, but every episode I get off and I've learned something new. And then that's another partnership. We became friends because I had you on my podcast. Totally. I didn't know you before that. I think we connected on Instagram. And then and I've also learned that through these years and through all my friends at Bigger Pockets, and then having everybody on and them saying, oh, I found Bigger Pockets, and then I went to Bigger Pockets conference. And then it's like, you see that the network is open. It doesn't always have to be perfect, but it's how you use the network. And the more mindfully you use a network, definitely the more benefits you're going to get out of it.
And what do you think a mindful use of a network is?
Win-win. How can you help someone without requiring a gain for yourself? So maybe even like win for the other party. Can I help someone with a piece of information or an area or some geographical assistance because I've lived there? Can I spend time in the forums just answering people's questions without ever saying, hey, P.S., I'm also licensed if you want to go find a house hack? Like they can find me if they need to. And I think more people are learning because almost everyone who's been a guest on the podcast has said like that's where it's at. It's meetups where you get the confidence to then go proceed. It's the camaraderie of being around other investors, and it's the mastermind principle of who do you want to learn from? You can't learn from if you're just like talking to your family and friends. You eventually have to build your networks. And the only place you're going to build it is by going out and meeting people at meetups, creating masterminds, and making them yourself. A lot of people who've been on have said, there wasn't a meetup in my area, so I made one. And now it's been, now it's going 5 years for a lot of them. And that's where all their deal flow comes from. Yeah,
that's so good. I was thinking about the kind of qualifying these non-quantifiable things. Like if you have any expected outcome from a mastermind, you're going to show up differently. So here's my specific thought and question for you is like, if there's someone who does need something right now, like they are in a financially desperate position, how do you become unattached? Like, how do they mindset their way out of, I do need the money right now, but I want to show up in a way that I'm not like expecting short-term gain?
Yeah, that's a great question. And I do think it's really hard. I mean, I think if you're struggling and first of all, one, real estate's not a great asset for quick money. I mean, you can look at all the house flippers in the world. No one's going to tell you house flipping is easy. It's the worst. It can be really, prolific and profitable, but it's not good. So if you need quick money, becoming a wholesaler is not a good idea.
Yeah.
Like, it's much, much harder than most people think. So I think that's really the first problem, is that people are looking for that quick fix, short-term income boost from, usually it starts at, oh, I'll become a wholesaler, then I'll get enough money to become a flipper. But like, wholesaling's hard. Flipping's even harder.
Yeah.
So you're basically going in with no experience, maybe have just read Jay Scott's book on flipping houses, and that's all you know, and you have no connections. So I think really the fault is really in the mode of you trying to get your money, or people who leave their W-2. Yeah. I mean, look, people want to leave their job, but you can't leave until you have a nest egg. And then why leave if you can do both, or can you figure out the strategy? But I understand. And I think a need, though, when you're networking, the big difference, a lot of what I say is approach. If you want somebody's help who knows more than you in any area, you have to approach them with something not vague. They're busy.
Yeah.
You can't just say like, yeah, how do I become a real estate investor? Nobody can really answer that because they don't know enough about you. And honestly, I don't know if I want to spend the time to get to know that because I don't even know you.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean? So that's the approach is also different. I had somebody text me. It's just literally happened today. The text was just like, do you have off-market properties? Nothing else. I don't even know who the person is. And I was like, area, price, strategy. He's like, yeah, all of that.
I have so many questions.
I'm like, I don't work like that. And then he called me twice. He or she, I don't even know. Never given me a name.
Wow.
He's like, well, do you have properties? I'm like, this isn't really going the right way. I'm not interested. I don't even know who you are. There's no approach. Hello?
How are you feeling when they ask you that? Like, how are you feeling? What is that like?
Like aggrieved, like annoyed and put on, because I think, a lot of people know I don't talk on the phone at all. And it's for this exact reason. One, my phone rings 150 times a day. So I just silence every call. But time is really important to me. And I don't think that you can be mindful in anything that you do if you're always rushing around. Yeah. That completely makes you, it crushes the ability to be mindful because you don't have the chance to reflect at all. And this is what people are doing. It's basically modern real estate marketing is just spam, text messaging, random sellers, hey, do you want to sell your house? I hope somebody bites. Well, what if you spent an hour figuring out who that person was, looked up the data, did some deep dives, looked around social, tried to get enough information, then go out and see if you could help them? Isn't this going to be a better strategy? And I think a lot of the house flippers that I think are the best, and even the best wholesalers, they're really there to help people. They want to make money too, and you can help people and make money, and that's a win-win. But you can't be scratching for an extra $1,000. But like you were saying before, I mean, some people, they need the money, but this isn't the right industry for that. If you need that $1,000 wholesale fee, this isn't it, because you're going to be putting your needs over the other people in the transaction. And those people are losing a home or selling a home or don't know where they're going. And I think that's where, when I think of why I brought mindfulness to real estate investing, it's really about that. It's not just a house, it's someone's house and there's land under it. There's a whole system where there was nothing there before, where you have land and a house. It's cool. You can buy both. Yeah. But what's your use going to be, and who are you putting out, from that house? And I did have to learn that at an early age, because my dad was a really nice landlord, but we did have to do some uncomfortable foreclosure removals, where at the time you just called the sheriff and they literally came and put all the stuff out on the lawn, and then you just padlocked the door.
I'm amazed that you having that experience so early on didn't turn you away from real estate in some way. How do you view that? I mean, I know I have my perspectives, but how do you see being part of that process? How did you not just turn away from real estate? What's the value in it?
Oh, my dad was just such a good teacher. Without, I mean, he was, in my mind at the time, as like a 14, 15-year-old, he was annoying, but he really wasn't annoying. He was cool. Just like I hope my kids actually think I'm cool. But he was always trying to teach me something. So my dad was such a nice person that was always a last option. But at some point, it's like, you let them stay for 2 years in a foreclosure, like, we're not getting paid, like, we have to turn the property, we have to do something. So there were times when we had to do it, and he would always turn it into a lesson. I always tell this story because it's actually like no one believes it's actually true, but it is. It was a 2-year foreclosure window. Everything that we waited, nothing, they hadn't have any money. A lot of people were trying to help them. We were like, we're willing to help. Somebody has to pay us though. We own the house, we have it. So eventually we had to put them out. We tried for years to figure out where they were going to go. Somebody finally had told us they really did have a place to go. They just didn't want to leave.
Mm-hmm.
So when the sheriffs came and they were putting their stuff out on the lawn, these people, they were older. They were like 80 years old. This is, again, 2 years of no payments or anything. And they laid down in front of my car, and I was 16 and I'm driving and my dad's in the passenger seat, which he didn't like driving with me anyway. And I'm like, I'm like freaking out and everybody's yelling. The neighbors are coming over. There's dogs running around. And I'm like, what do you want me to do? Like, this is insane. Like, this is what this is. And my dad was so calm. He's just like, well, just drive around him. I'm like, the driveway's not there. He's like, just drive on the grass. I'm like, I don't want to mess up my car. He's like, there's no rocks. Just drive on the grass around him. I'm like, I'm going to run into him. He's like, he's laying on the ground. He's not going to move. So I drove around him and I just drove out onto the street, not off the driveway, and I'm like really stressed out, like 16-year-old, like sweating bullets, and we're just driving down the road. And then my dad's, probably was just like, well, let's go to Friendly's and get ice cream. I'm like, okay. Like he didn't make anything a big deal. And that was kind of,
wow.
What he did for me in life in general, which was he was providing a mindful basis for me well before I even knew that was in existence. Because whenever I had a problem, I would just call him and just like, basically be annoyed on the phone. And 5 minutes later, I'd feel better. And I think in knowing that and the way that he taught that, it was like, he's going to keep talking to me about investing every time. He was waiting for me after school on Fridays every day in front of my school in Brooklyn. He was always waiting. He was never late, on time every single Friday to pick me up for the weekend. And then the whole way we're going to talk about real estate.
Wow.
And money.
I love that.
Money and real estate.
Tell me a little bit about that self-regulation process for you, because I feel like that's something that you're really incredible at, where you as the 16-year-old were kind of maybe a little bit dysregulated and your dad's like completely calm through it all.
Yeah, I think, again, that was in my 40s and thanks to therapy and understanding that I fall on the spectrum somewhere, which makes it harder for me to get out of the rigidity portion of the way that I was. It kind of gave me like a little bit of a break for people always saying like how rigid I was, or why are you always in your room, or, why are you doing this or why are you doing that? It just gave me a little bit of leverage to understand that I have to work a little bit harder, but I have to work a little harder on myself to understand like what I'm made of and what do I really want to get out of something. I think one of the best examples to your question is the way that I used to email. I was a trial attorney for 10 years. So you're basically arguing all day. That can leave you dysregulated at the end of the day. You come home, I had little kids. It's very difficult, but you're arguing constantly. You're in court, you're arguing. Then you go on email when email came out, and then you're arguing on email. And the one thing that I learned is somebody told me probably 10 years ago, the next time that you're about to send an email when you're really mad, just leave it in your inbox overnight. And I started doing that 10 years ago. And I honestly, I've never once sent that email. I've probably done it 100 times, but I've never once sent the email, because then overnight I was like, even if I was right, and most of the time I think I'm right. It was unnecessary. Yeah. And I think to be like self-regulated, you have to know what's necessary and what's not. Do I want to give somebody a piece of my mind? Like, do I want to go back and text this person who's texting me about the property something more? Yeah, but then it just creates another rabbit hole where they're going to keep responding. It's like DMs on Instagram. I just block everybody. Yeah. I don't need SEO help. I don't need a dope logo. I don't need this stuff. So instead of going back, occasionally I'll have fun with it, but that's like for me. Yeah. But I think that being regulated for me is not engaging in things that aren't going to have a positive outcome for me, because I can go dark. And I've gone dark in my life, just depressive episodes, I think. And when I say depressive, with all due respect to people who are clinically depressed, I was not. I get depressed in the regular, more known word choice, which is more sad. Right. Because I've had a lot of loss, but I don't believe I've ever been clinically depressed. And I think I just want to people know that it's much different to me for people who suffer from clinical depression and me saying I'm depressed. Sure. I just went through stuff in my life, but there were times where people are saying things about you and it doesn't feel good, so then you dig a hole a little bit deeper and then you just don't, you don't want to come out. And when you're like that, it's much harder to do business of any kind. We've talked about this before. If you're not good with yourself and you're not building yourself up, or your relationship that you're in is bad, you're not going to be good at anything you're doing. You're going to think you are, but you're not. And everybody's going to know that you're not. And they're going to give you a break until they can't give you a break.
How did you make that shift? Like from going from feeling that way to seeing your way out of a hole?
I think it was my own journey for mindfulness. Losing I lost my mom when I was 20, lost my dad when I was 33, and they were both my best friends. So I think after 33, I kind of realized like, oh crap, I don't have my dad to talk to anymore. Like I have my sister, and my sister basically became my dad. Mm-hmm. So it was like, how am I going to go on doing business, and being a dad, at the time being a husband, and try to figure out how it was. And it was really like, I never really tried therapy. I thought it was kind of like woo-woo, which is ludicrous now to me. But I happened to find a therapist of my own who just like unlocked everything in my life. And she was just like changed the way that I looked at myself. And I realized I wasn't the person that I wanted to be. I used to think I was, and I was probably pompously saying that I was, but I wasn't. I was a good person. I just wasn't as good as I could be. And I think in the last 10 to 12 years, I've become the better person by focusing in on just things like we were talking about. Like, should I send this? I have a tendency to like to argue with people. It's why I was such a good attorney. But am I gonna gain anything out of it? If I'm going to argue with someone and we're going to get into that and it's going to create that negative energy, it better be for a good reason or a good cause or to protect somebody that I care about. It's not fun. I have better things to do than, have inane arguments with people.
Yeah, I would love to hear more about you liking yourself now. I was at a place a couple years ago in a relationship that was unhealthy for me. And I was like, I just don't like who I am. And I've been able to shift that, but I would love to hear how it is to be on the after of that specifically.
I mean, very rewarding, but I still think there's people that want to tear you down. This, and, we're talking in the context of, can people really do their business, for this podcast, investing. You can't do your business if you feel terrible about yourself. You're going to be bad at every part. So it's like the second that you realize that you have to keep yourself up, then all of a sudden your business starts going better. People like you more because you're not being rude anymore because you're short or you're running out of time. So I think, pausing on everything has really been a big thing. And that was really my dad's overriding lesson always to me, which was actually going to be the name of a different podcast that I never did yet, was called Don't Rush Life. It was the name of my original coaching company for life coaching. And it was always at a time where I would be like, why, I would miss a turn in the car and I'd be just like cursing. My dad's like, what is wrong with you? You can just go up and turn around. And I'm like, that's going to take 2 more minutes. He's like, where are you going? Like, we're just going home. What's the difference? And I think losing him and then getting therapy and then being much more vulnerable about what I wasn't doing well instead of trying to be, male bravado. I'm good at everything. Because I grew up, pretty good at most sports. I just kind of gave in to, it's okay to be vulnerable. I still don't think I'm perfect at it, but I know across the board, I'm going to get better every day. And I think that makes me better, makes me a better podcast host, makes me better at asking questions. It leaves me more open to, building relationships like we talked about. But the biggest thing that I think all of these changes and the kind of what I think for others would build more self-confidence. I was always pretty confident just because I felt like I had my bearings because of my parents. But I think it gives us the ability to say no now. And if you look at the context of our lives, relationships, you don't want to end them. It's a tough thing to do. But business especially, people fail because they feel bad. They don't want to say no. And your biggest power in real estate investing, just like in life, is the ability to walk away. If somebody's not treating you the right way, or if the deal numbers don't look good, you have freedom to just walk away. You don't have to have the deal. You don't have to have the person. And I think it's a perspective that makes it okay. Like during the last 3 years, I wasn't buying. I don't
Right.
care how many doors I have. Makes no difference to me. I feel no like pressure to buy just because, I have an investing podcast. There was no good deals. I didn't like it.
Jonathan, that is so fascinating to me as someone who tends to be I think of life as like a buffet and like, I want to try everything. And you have this way of, this is like the beauty of the yin and yang of us, but like, tell me about not having FOMO. Like, how does that flow through
Yeah,
in your life, not feeling the pressure?
that isn't. I mean, I'm a glitchy person. Like I have Asperger's. I'm low on the spectrum, but the more that people get to know me, they know like, oh yeah, okay, that makes sense a little bit. And it's not a badge I wear, but it's not a badge that I don't wear. I think I just never ever cared what anyone else thought, other than like physical appearance. Like I wanted to be attractive because I wanted girlfriends when I was younger, but I went to summer camp growing up. So I had a lot of female friends. I've always had more female friends. So it wasn't like I didn't always need to be dating someone. I always had a lot of female friends. So I felt good. It's great having male friends, but growing up and liking girls, at 10, 12, 13 years old, it's nice to have that attention. But I think my parents just did a good job of raising me to have confidence, and I don't think it was really, I think they were just very open. I had no rules growing up at all. I never had a curfew. I didn't have to go to bed at a certain time. And I really didn't do anything, too bad.
How does that intrinsic motivation come through for you? Like you have this incredible record. Do you know how many days you've done meditation nonstop? I don't know your number.
Well, on one, it was 1600s. The other one's at like 2400. So probably 6-7 years without missing a day.
Like what in you motivates you to do that?
I mean, partly my kids, we've talked about this, you have multiple children as well.
Yeah.
I think when you look at it and as my kids are 22 and 20 now, and it's like, I just wanted to be better at all the things I did. And parenting's hard, especially when you're a single parent, there's no one to turn to say like, hey, can I get some help here? It's like just you. So I had to develop better things, and meditation just helped me a lot. It goes to what we said though, meditation, aimless walks, which are my favorite.
Yeah.
I'll just sit and watch the grass grow and people think that's crazy. My phone ring, Bing, not ring, because I won't answer it. And I look, yeah, I will, because I don't make myself have to be technology agnostic to be successful at being mindful. But waking up every morning and meditating for 30 minutes in whatever format I do, I don't sit with my legs crossed and my, in zazen and have my, fingers pressed together and my palms open. Sometimes I'm tired, so I'll look at my phone, I'm listening, I'm trying to get stuff going. I'll brush my teeth while the meditation is going. It doesn't have to be perfect, but I think that it's the will to not really like be better than my parents because they were so great. It's just I want to be better for my kids, and I want to be better in my business. How could I have a podcast about the mindful approach to real estate investing and then be yelling at everybody all the time?
Yeah.
I think most people who know me in real life, including you now, know that the title of the podcast fits the way that I live my life. And that's something that's important to me is, authenticity in a world where, social media, I don't know if all those people are authentic, but then you meet them in real life and you're like, wow, they're just like they were, which is why it's great to have a podcast. You actually get an hour of face-to-face time with people to see like, are they real?
Yeah. And you're so real. Tell me about with your children. That is so much of why you do what you do is for that legacy. What is the message that you would leave with your kids if they were to remember one thing that they learned from you?
I think just the ability to be themselves. I grew up at a time where I was just going to go to college and then I was going to go to law school and then I was going to go be a lawyer. And my dad never told me to do any of that stuff. It's just like, that's what I was doing. And I've just been different. My daughter graduated, her junior and senior year were during the pandemic. She went to school a total of 3 times in 2 years. That's not her fault.
Wow.
So we weren't prepped for the same things the same way. My son wants to be an actor. I fully support that. And I'm going to work as hard as I can to make sure that I can support that. And my dad taught me that. I was an attorney until he died. And then right after he died, I just stopped being an attorney because I know that it made him happy. But he would have been happy if I was like, I'm going to do investing full time. He just would have, given me more lectures about how to make money. But I think legacy is important. People look at real estate investing for generational wealth and building a legacy, but it's not just about money. It's about the values that you want to leave to your kids. And that includes work ethic. And I work hard at whatever things that I'm doing. And I don't think that you can get good in any aspect of real estate investing if you don't have a good attention to detail and a good work ethic, and that goes back to the short-term, long-term thing. What are you in it for? 5 days or 5 years?
Yeah, that's so good. It's interesting that you see that work ethic also working with in conjunction with not having to be hurried or not being rushed. It's amazing how you see those blending.
I think that's hard for people though. I think I could see your head thinking about those two together, but that I work sometimes 16 hours a day without a problem. I have a very, very high capacity for work. I've had weeks where I've recorded 8, 9 podcast episodes because I like it. But, might I just in the middle of the day watch a show for an hour? Yep. Because that's my break, or I'll go on a walk and I'll just walk. I'd like to get to the point where I'm walking without my phone. That's really like where I'm going. And there's a lot of books that I've read that put me in those, potential areas where I think, maybe I could get there. Stolen Focus by Johan Hari, Deep Work, Cal Newport. Those are books that I read everything because I want to have a better life. But then I take what I learn in books that have nothing to do with real estate and I apply them to real estate. Yeah,
that's so good. And I think I love what you're saying with hustle. Hustle is more about a state of mind, not about the number of hours.
Yeah, of course. It's like, I think of hustle and grind is work too hard. Hustle is good. Like, you want a hustler on your team. You want someone who's willing to be kind of, a Swiss Army knife and can do a lot of things. But again, at what cost? What's the cost for overdoing yourself? A lot of us have found out. I left the business of investing in real estate for a year because I just answered a phone call at the dinner table with my kids. And I told I said, this is important to one of my kids. And I was like, I'm never going to make my life like that. The next day I quit. I put my license in referral, and all I did for a year was work on myself. And that's when I started my first podcast was a podcast called Dad. And I started it during that year off when I was just focusing on, myself and my kids and trying to figure out what's going to work.
I think that's one of the things that's made you so successful is like when you see that something's not working, like whatever it takes, like you're not attached to what didn't work. Same with investing. A lot of people think about sunk costs, so they won't buy the next property, or they want to buy the next property when they shouldn't. Right. And I would love to hear from you about your high standards. I feel like you have impeccability, but not perfectionism.
Yeah, it's a tough one because I think I get a lot of crap from people about having, quote, too high standards. And I find that a little bit odd. For me, standards, at least in the businesses that I've been in, are ethics. They're highly related. And to do things ethically in the right way are very important to me. But it's also important to know, maybe I didn't handle that the best way that I could. And that goes to my high standards as well. Like sometimes I'm not living up to what I want to be. And I have to say, I could have handled that differently. And if you can do that, you can adjust the trajectory of your business like 100-fold in 1 year, just by unlocking the vulnerability of saying, that one's on me. Like anyone who's using any business who's just like, well, that's just the way that we do it. That's a terrible strategy. Like the world is literally changing before our eyes. We have robots writing all of our copy for us. I don't, because I don't use AI at all.
Right.
Again, though, but it goes to having standards. Why would I have a robot? I'm a better writer. That's not a good time save for me. That's not a who, not how for me. I just think that I always said on the on-market part, I wanted to make real estate better. And then when I made the podcast, like I want to make investing better. I want to help somebody out there learn something. And I've said this before, we've talked about it, and I've talked about it on podcasts before. The coolest thing about being able to disseminate information in this form is that there's plenty of people who could be listening that I'll never meet, I'll never hear from, I'll never know that they've accomplished anything. But one thing either you or I or another guest in these 100 episodes could have said could dramatically change their life by just the light bulb goes off in real estate investing when you least expect it. And once it goes off, from all the guests I've had on, it's ready to go.
Yeah.
Yours went off early. You're 14. You're like, I'm going to figure out how to renovate this. And mine was always being turned on by my dad, even when I wanted to turn it off. So if we can just have this conversation, and someone in Michigan in a small town hears it and they are like not pushed into buying their first property, but given the confidence, to then go up and then go to a meetup. And then they make one friend at a meetup. And then a year later, they have 12 friends at a meetup, and then they find somebody else. It's a story of a lot of the people that we know who just figured it out. And that's why I think it's just the podcasts are there for people to listen to on their own terms. We can't control when they listen to it. And I listen to tons of podcasts just because I like the intake of information that way.
Yeah, I love that. That's what's so exciting to me about mindset and about coaching is like it can be one little thing, but an intelligent person, you should talk about intelligence. That'd be so fun. But an intelligent person will have that aha and then actually act on it. And it's like this infinite return, this infinite ability to change their life in a way that you never would have expected that can't be quantified. And like, that's really what mindset is and what the podcast is doing.
Yeah, but you've seen this too in your coaching. And I've talked to a lot of people who host meetups and coach, investors that there's a change. You can just see it in someone's eye when they finally get it. Mm-hmm. What I was saying before, someone may be getting it right now and we'll never know who they are. But when you can see it up close and like you just tell someone like, hey, you don't have to buy that property. And they're like, what? But everybody's talking about doors. I want to keep up. And you're like, why? Like, who are you trying to keep up with? Your friends don't even invest. Who are you trying to prove yourself to? Don't you want to make money for the future and do it smart? You want to buy a good investment or a bad investment? If you just want to buy anything, like whatever, then I guess go get a Ferrari. That sounds like a terrible idea too. The separation of how people are going to figure out what to do with that is always going to be interesting.
And it's fun that every person is so different. Like in a consult, I had someone on a consult with me and she just had in her mind that like it had to take 9 months to buy a property. Yeah. And she's like, the value that came to her when I said, why April was so huge. And then I have another client who's actually listens to your podcast all the time. That's how she found me. And she's the opposite. She's like, I go online and I just hear all this hustle culture when in reality, she wants to slow down, buy one property, buy it cash, and doesn't have to get it rented out immediately, doesn't have to be under pressure to renovate it. Like she gets to choose her life and her mindset there. And I think you do that uniquely. There's lots of hustle out there. You do that. You bring that.
I think we really, all of us who think the same way, should be trying to help people do that. If you want to buy cash, buy cash. I was a cash buyer until I was in my 30s. And I was fortunate enough to have the opportunity to do that. Do I use leverage now? Yeah. I understand leverage, but, I learned more about leverage when I read Rich Dad Poor Dad. And I just, gave that to my son, and he's like, oh, I've heard of this. I'm like, all right, it's go time. Let's see what happens. But I do think, those are both really good points because each investor is going to be different and they have to feel just like we were saying, what I would want to leave to my kids is the ability to be yourself. And your investing journey is your own. You do need people and mentors to help you not make mistakes. But like if you've done your due diligence, I would always follow my gut if my gut was confident. And that's why I can act the way that I act in deals. I'm notorious for behaving on the investor side, not as an agent, on the investor side as I have nothing to lose because I don't need the property. I want the property, but I don't want it that bad. Mm-hmm. I want it for $600,000. And they say, well, I want $620,000. I said, great. Now I only want it for $590,000 because you don't have anybody else involved in the bidding. And if I don't get it today, I don't care. I'm going to go home, eat my dinner, watch Billions and do work for 3 more hours and then go to sleep. I'm not going to worry about the property. I've never once thought, although there's plenty of properties I wish I bought, I've never sat pining for a property like, because that was just my mindset at the time led me to make a decision to get rid of a property. And some of those have been bad decisions. Not many, but there's definitely some, I should have kept that, but I don't stay up at night worrying about it. It's like, there's properties everywhere. They'll come along when they come along.
I love what you're talking about. You're kind of hitting on regret. And I remember for me, my biggest fear was regretting working and missing my kids, because I had come from a place where I imagined that I should be with them 24/7, and I was homeschooled and various other things. But it feels like you've been able to just release that need for regret. Like I know for me at one time, I just decided I wouldn't have regret anymore, that regret is an emotion that comes from a thought.
Yeah.
And I was like, I just will never think the thoughts that create regret. But I'm curious to hear your process in that, because it might be different.
Yeah. During that, when I started to go into therapy, and then I started to like really try to work on myself, like reading books and like reading the books on personal growth that people tell you to read, and like just reading stuff that I didn't think that I would come across, 4-hour work week. There's a lot more in that book than just working 4 hours a week. Tim Ferriss, I've learned a ton just about being a podcast host from listening to Tim Ferriss. But regret in and of itself, it was a book. I don't think it was Mitch Albom's book, but he talked about it in there. There was a book about dying where somebody interviewed 100 people on their deathbed, and all they talked about was regret. And I said at that point, I'm never going to be that person. No matter what happens or when I do go, I never want to be there saying, I wish I did this. So even if I don't do stuff perfect, I have to just give myself the grace and say, you know what, you screwed that one up. You're going to be fine tomorrow. You're going to be a good person. So, people who are confident like I can say I'm a good person. People who are not confident will say, hey, I'm a good person too. I said, well, I'm not talking about you. I'm just saying, like, I don't have any worries about me in the grand scheme of history being a good person, but I also know how small I am. I'm absolutely nobody. The fact that anybody listens to me is phenomenal to me, and I'm completely thankful. But like in 100 years, no one's going to even know who I was. If we're talking about universe and like how small we are, that's why I look at grass, to be honest. I haven't talked about this a lot, but it goes to mindfulness. The reason why I just sit on a bench and look at blades of grass is because they're like snowflakes. Like you can look in a field, there's like 10 million blades of grass that are all different. That's all we are. So if somehow I can go on the airwaves and talk to someone and they have like one good reaction, which of course over 100 episodes, hopefully there's a lot more, like that makes me feel good about myself, and that's the stuff that I can take with me. And that's why I don't have to go, later and have regret, because also I'm okay with apologizing. I'm okay with truly apologizing, which is acknowledging what you've done wrong, say where you messed up, how you're going to change it, and then not do it again. It's not, I'm sorry. And I think you won't have regrets if you're able to apologize for things that maybe you didn't do perfect, and also not weigh yourself down. I mean, if we were walking around with regret is the worst, It's just the worst. It drags you down all the time. I should have done this better. I should have done that better. And like we were saying, you can do that about deals. You can do that. Oh, I should have invested in that syndication. Now I'm kicking myself. Well, it's like, well, just get up and invest in another one. Do your due diligence. Mm-hmm. But, don't stop. And that's why you need, we've talked about it. Almost everybody on the show has talked about it. The 5 people you spend the most time around, that's you. And if those people aren't supporting like the growth that you want, or they're not interested in real estate investing and like that's your thing, they're going to drag you down. Go to a mastermind, go to a meetup, be in a room with 5 to 10 other people who are all doing what you want to do, and you'll immediately feel better about yourself because you're no longer the outcast of your little friend group who doesn't want to grow, bigger. And nothing to them. It doesn't mean you don't have to be friends with them, but I don't want anyone in my life who's negative, because I was negative. And I know that I was negative, just that I was just a negative kid, thought everything sucked and this is bad. And I was always complaining to my dad. And then I realized like, that's got to suck for other people. Like, I don't want to be that person, because though I don't have those people in my life, because I just, if you have one friend and all they do is just like say how bad everything is, you're not going to go home and feel good. You're going to be annoyed at them, but also feel like, oh, I mean, maybe stuff does suck. It doesn't. Like it's good. We're breathing, so things are pretty solid. Hey, this is Jonathan. Thanks for listening to another episode of Zen and the Art of Real Estate Investing. On this brief interlude, I wanted to tell you that we have a mailing list. I actually don't love mailing lists. There's so much. This is not an automated mailing list where you get on a drip campaign. These are written once a month, will eventually be at once a week again by me, direct, and they're not spammy. So if you want to sign up for our mailing list, you can go to bit.ly/streamlined with a D mail. Bit.ly is bit.ly/streamlined mail. See you there.
That's interesting thinking about sort of leveling up within networking. I remember there's a lot of times when I've held on to friendships and kind of been like, what comes after this? Like, even if we're looking at in terms of dollars that people make, I know that's a really shallow way to say it, but like in going to the next level, I was like, none of my friends are there. Like, I'm going to sort of be the outlier, and that felt uncomfortable. How do you allow yourself to shift and change your group and the people that you're with without being worried that you'll outgrow them?
Yeah, I mean, part of that question, I think, is a lot about money and money in general. A lot of people grow up with a scarcity mentality where that's different. I didn't, but I understand people who did, and I cannot relate to them personally because I did not. But I'm also not an outcast who can't figure that out and help somebody. But I think the way that you look at money as a scale is important. So you're saying like, hey, these people in this group, they don't make as much money. It's not about the fact that they don't make that much money. It's that they have no want to make more, which means that the motivation is there. It's status quo versus always moving. You're always moving. You like momentum. You want to grow bigger. You want to grow better. I want to grow bigger. I want to grow better. I want to provide for my kids. Same for me. That just means that it's very hard for me to stay in a group where those people just, they're okay. And again, I don't have anything else with people who are like, yeah, like being content is a great feeling. It's just that just because I don't want to stay content doesn't mean I don't like my life. It just means I really like working and I like real estate. So I like to do that all the time.
Right. I love that you're kind of getting behind, because when I asked the question, it felt weird, but it was like, yeah, it's not about the money. It's about their mindset in going bigger. And at whatever level you get to, there are always people who are ready to go from that place to the next level. I also love that when you were talking about the regret, coming back to the deathbed idea, it's like, it's not about what you do that creates the regret. It's about like, it's not how many deals you do that you'll regret not doing a deal. It's about choosing how you look at it. So I think that's just
I mean, but think about it. To me, how did the deal go? How did I treat everybody in the deal? I mean, look, some deals go haywire, but it's the difference for me is I spent 10 years negotiating life sentences, every single day. I'm going to take somebody's liberty when I was a prosecutor. I'm going to try to save somebody from going to prison for life, when I was a defense attorney. So for me to be putting negotiations in real estate, it's all fluff to me. Like, oh, great. So again, that's perspective that I have that maybe others don't, but that's what I try to relay in a mindfulness. Like, hey, look, this is what, negotiation means in this end, but like, we don't really have to fight in real estate. You're trying to figure out, can we both find a meeting ground? And if not, like, let's just not do the deal. Cause like, I don't want to be stressed out all the time over, some random $300,000 house in a town I don't even like. Like I decided to out of state invest, and then I'm going back and forth over like $4,000. Just like that sounds so terrible to me. That there would be some new investor out there who's like, I want to get my first property. I heard good things about San Antonio. I'm going to get one in San Antonio. And then you're going back and forth on a property you've never even seen. You don't know the basement. And you're like, well, I'm not going to go 1,000 more. It's like, this is all messed up. Let's make this easier and more transparent. Like, what's the deal metric that will work for you? And I think when people are, their own ego can get inside the buy box, I would say now. I need, I read a book, so I need 70% of ARV or I'm not going to do it. It's like, you're not looking at the asset. just like we're saying, you're not looking at the person. There's a person who owns the house that you're trying to buy. The more that you talk to the person, the better the deal will be for everybody. The more you look at it just as that, you're not going to get anywhere. You can look at it as an asset because an asset has multiple exit strategies. That's what you want. And if you know more about the potential exit strategies, you have a better chance, and you know you can pay more and still win. Which is why, again, things like seller finance or sub 2 exist. If you know all of these things, you can be more creative. But every single person who does creative finance will tell you, and most off-market, acquisition specialists, the best deals come from the best relationships. And then more deals come from the same relationships that you wouldn't expect.
Yeah. And I think that comes through in the name of your podcast, like Zen and art. It almost speaks to this right brain approach, this relational approach.
To me, negotiation is art. I mean, arguably a science, but not just a rigid, one thing. The art of the deal, it's a thing. Negotiation is an art form. Can you figure out where you have leverage, in a good way?
Yeah.
And then explain it. To me, it's like, just say there's investors out there who somebody told them, hey, just make 10 offers a week and just make them all, like 40% lower than you should. And then one day, maybe somebody will say yes. But guess what? That's not worth anybody's time. Like for the agent, that's not worth their time to do 40 lowballs just to get one. And then it's a bad paycheck too. It's like, why don't you figure out where the leverage is? Explain it. Hey, I know nobody else is going to tell you, but you have a structural problem. So if you sell to these new people, they're going to think they're getting a house that's good. And then they're going to do inspections, and then the deal's going to fail. And this is what I do all the time. I look for the problem that nobody else is seeing, because most real estate agents don't know anything about houses or investing. That's just the truth. And then I explain to them, and they're usually very gruff at first. No, it's going to go fine. Then it always fails at inspection because they're trying to get over on someone. That's a seller trying to get over someone, knowing, hey, I know I have a structural problem, but let me hope some dummies buy it. That's not nice either. And people say, well, that's just a business. They should do their due diligence. I agree. But maybe if you wouldn't spend the next 6 months going in and out of deals if you just had a pre-home inspection as a seller, delivered it to somebody and say, here are the issues with my home. You're going to get your best offers. Everybody knows what's on the table. Easy transaction at close. And that's where, I'm hoping 2024 transparency just becomes more of a thing. It would be great for everybody involved if it was just a little bit more transparent. I think how we do real estate is pretty transparent. None of us are reinventing the way to buy houses. We're figuring out what other people said. But if we could do our business more transparently and be able to walk away, man, that's going to feel like a better life.
Yeah. And I feel like that's something that you really bring to the industry, is that thought leadership, right? You're thinking mindfully about how do we, of course, work within what real estate has been, but take it to the next level. And transparency is one example of the vision that you have for what you're creating.
Yeah. And that goes to the standards too. I think I'm just unwilling to bend.
Yeah.
If I have to do something that's against my principles to get a deal, I don't need to do the deal, because that will keep me up. And I don't want to live like that. I don't want to have that. And that would be a regret for me. It wouldn't be a regret that I lost the deal. It would be a regret that I did a deal and I did it in a way that I shouldn't have done. I got over on someone. I'm not going to do everybody's job for them, but, I don't need to needlessly take advantage of someone for, a nominal amount of money, or even for a lot. It's just put it on the table. It's okay for all parties to at least feel okay at closing. It's uncomfortable for people who are, in foreclosure or pre-foreclosure. But I mean, just think about real estate marketing. They tell you in a nutshell, hey, they're in pre-foreclosure, so send them a notice letting them know that they can't pay for their house. I mean, just go over and kick them in the face. That's idiotic marketing. You don't market that way to pre-foreclosures and foreclosures. Mm-hmm. Your in is always something different. You do have to acknowledge that, hey, the records say that you have a list pendants. It could be wrong, which is what I always say. Look, a lot of times these are wrong. You're giving them leverage and an opportunity to have a dialogue instead of trying to say, hey, I know you can't even pay your mortgage and support your family, but hey, do you want a cash offer? P.S. I don't even have cash. I use hard money at 15%. It's just, that is ridiculous to me. That's where the transparency comes in. And that's, honestly, that's why wholesaling has such a bad name. It's not transparent. People are definitely, the good wholesalers are real good, but that's a very, very small percentage.
I also think you're preserving the person's dignity in that interaction, right? You're not belittling them. You're not talking down to them. Like, you see them as a human. We're humans real estate investing. We're humans losing our home if it's a foreclosure, right? Like, we're people with real things going on in our lives and real feelings and emotions.
And I mean, from the other side, look, a lot of times people don't want to hear the truth. It's why people, go to therapy and just lie, because they don't want to face the truth, which is, it's crazy. How are you going to get help if you can't be honest about the stuff you're doing? But yeah, I mean, I think, sometimes you tell someone, hey, look, this is what the records, and they just like, no, that's not the way it is. And then you go, my dialogue would be, well, I'm just telling you that it's there so you could clean it up, and they're still going, no, it's not there. And then I'll show them a piece of paper with it there. I don't have anything to create this. So you do have to get in those situations where it's like, okay, but the more you have to go, the more you have to do what we were talking about before. Is like, okay, going any further isn't serving either of us. They're resistant. This is not a win for me. I can just go get a sandwich, like I can go sit in the park and just like, it doesn't have to be this deal. There's a lot of other deals and people out there.
Yeah. I know we're getting close to time, and there's a question I just have to ask.
Let's do it. You've got 7 minutes. You're very busy. You have 12 minutes, actually.
Yeah, I have 12. So I would love to hear about how you've changed through the podcast, or how the podcast over 100 episodes has changed you.
Wow. Yeah, a lot. I mean, I thought I knew a lot. I mean, I do know a lot. I have a photographic memory, so I store a lot. But I know a lot about real estate. And that's why I was able to, even start the podcast and be able to like have questions to ask and not be kind of like a drone host. But I think every episode I've learned of a different strategy or a different story or gotten motivated by something somebody's doing. And 2024 is really the year for me to start to put these things in play. You and I are working on some stuff together, and we just always are just having these like, mindset hours that we talk. I want to take Katie Neeson's redevelopment class, because when I had her on, I'm like, I'm in. I need to do this right now, and I'm buying a property in my town to do it. So I'm going to kind of like be surprising her when the episode comes out that when I start that class, like I'm going to do it. And then I had Tarl Yarber on. I'm taking, he has a Flippers Anonymous class. Like, that's me. I don't flip at the volume like he has 600 flips, but I think, getting access to people early through the help of Bigger Pockets and just being like kind of somewhat known helped me get interesting people. But I've had a lot of people on the podcast that I didn't know before, who I do an episode and I'm like, wow, why didn't I know you before? That's how you and I have become such close friends. But I think I look at it as I'm learning more about real estate investing than I ever could in any other fashion. And I'm part of that process. And then if I can help people deliver what they think about investing to others, again, that's a good thing. It makes me feel good about myself. So I think, one, not stopping was huge for me, because my other podcasts, I stopped them all. I got to a point where it was hard to get guests. It's just very hard. I'm very regimented, but like, this is not easy to run 100 episodes and do 2 episodes a week. But I didn't stop, and I kept making sure that I was working harder as a host. And that's because I listen to Tim Ferriss, I listen to Rich Roll, I listen to Dan Harris. These are not real estate podcasts. These are ways of me seeing how you become a better interviewer. And the one thing I'll say, since this is episode 100, when I listen to my episodes, I hear myself say like all the time. And my biggest goal for 2024 is to stop saying the word like so much. So if you've heard it out there, I know I'm doing it, and I'm going to stop.
And even that it so speaks to your level of self-awareness, and then this desire to make yourself the best version of you. Like, yeah, I see that this would be even better, and I'm going to do it.
I think that's part of the learning that we talked about, in this. And again, hopefully all of us as parents can pass this to our kids so they can start to learn these things earlier, because they definitely don't teach stuff like this in school. They should, right, but they should be teaching about investing, money, mindfulness, mental health. Like, these aren't your classes. You're just going to learn more about history, which is, it's great, but you don't need it every single year. These are other things that make it harder now with all the technology to grow up. So I think the way that I handle myself and the way that I want to keep learning, I look at my son, that kid, he learns everything. He reads like tons of books. He's 22 and he's always learning. And we're always having like very long discussions. My daughter's, in to become a diet aid, a nutritionist. And she's just like, we're having all these conversations about food. The thing I think that makes people want to be better is just learning everything. That's why I just learn everything. I'm almost at, my goal was 50 books for the year. I'm pretty close. I'm at like 46. I'm not going to make it. But, and then there's all the podcasts that I listen to. And then you add that with like masterclass. I've taken like every masterclass for everything. And I think that people don't understand, well, you don't have to just be learning about real estate investing to be a good real estate investor. Chris Voss just got into the real estate space, but he was an FBI negotiator. You can learn more by reading Split the Difference about negotiation than you're ever going to learn in a real estate book, because it's not about the real estate, it's about the person. And that's what we've been saying. Real estate is a relationships business, person to person. You're rarely buying from a corporation. Occasionally you are, and then it's easier because corporations don't have the same emotions, but people do. And if you focus more, as all of us go forward in our journey for 2024, you're just going to have a better year by trying to figure out how we can all work together, as a whole to make, the industry better. I've been pretty impressed with the industry, though. You're pretty new to it overall, just in terms of the wider scale of it.
Sure.
But like most, I just said like again, by the way, that's how I'm on it. Real estate investors, when we were at Bigger Pockets conference in October in Orlando, everybody was cool. Yeah. Everybody was there for the same reason. And that was really surprising to me, because social media is full of spam and BS, and I'm an investor and check out my car and look at all these houses and all my doors. That's not real. When you go to an investing event and you sit at a table, like when we were sitting at the table and we're like, oh, they have, they got 15 units, they're doing sober living. And you're like, everybody's doing something. If you can't be motivated there, switch to something else.
Yeah.
But find that grouping and you will exponentially increase what you do, whether it's small scale mastermind in your town or starting a mastermind that eventually grows into something bigger.
Yeah. And I love what you're saying, because I feel like it relies on the person and their becoming, like who we are being in real estate. I really believe this. As we level up, as you level up, as I level up, and then we go meet people, there's almost like this recognition of who that other person is and how self-aware they are, and just what, it's not about what industry knowledge they know so much as what they know about themselves. And so it's really about who people are that then they just bring with them into real estate. And of course it works, because that's just a way that we measure growth externally. But what's really happening is people are changing. And I feel like that's something that you and I are seeing in the real estate world that is becoming more broadly spoken about and more broadly known. But I feel like we're on the forefront of that.
I think so too. And if you go back to what we were talking about before, about the 5 people, in your life and who you need to eliminate from your life or spend less time from, as you go through, you're going to find that not everybody is in it for the right reason. Mm-hmm. And learning to cut them out at that stage, or to cancel that program or not do that right away, is important. Not too quick, but once you realize like, oh no, this is not what I thought it was. I didn't sign up for a spamathon. I wanted, this. And that's where you have to really figure out, who do I want to spend my real estate time with? Who can I learn from? Who can I teach? Because the more you teach, the more you learn. So that's why when people think of masterminds, they're always thinking like stepping up a level. But it's good when you're at one where you're at the top part too, because then you're helping everybody else. And everybody should know that no matter what you do, if part of your job is helping people, you'll feel better about yourself. That's why realtors have a bad name, because most of them don't try very hard. But being a real estate agent in general is great. You hand people the keys to their first house. There's not that much that's better than obviously having your kids and marriage and things like that. But like, that's a huge journey for some people. Some of those people, first person in their family ever to own a home. And you're able to guide them through a transaction. You can do these things as an investor also. You can help someone get out of a bad situation. You can tell them they can leave all the stuff from their hoarder's house because they don't, they know where to go, but they don't know what to do with all the stuff. We'll take whatever you want and leave the junk. That's what all of us who are good flippers say. Well, we're going to clean up the house anyway, so leave whatever you want. We don't care. No problem. Take everything that you want. And that's where it is. So, if we look forward, this is going to come out early in 2024. It's, how can you make real estate investing better? You and I are committed to it. We're talking about it all the time. Once a month, we're masterminding about it. And all the conversations you have should be about how can we make this all better and more transparent? Because if we do that, it's just going to be more fun. It's already fun, but it could be more fun if we start to delete the BS. Okay, that's obviously not true. Just then don't buy that. Don't buy that program when it's not the thing. And if you did spend the money, then get your use out of it. Maybe you did make a mistake, but I guarantee you there's not one. This is one thing I'll say before I hop off. No matter what you've paid for a real estate coaching program, I would guarantee that none of them are going to have bad materials. They're just probably recycled from someone else. But even the worst ones, if you do what they say to do, it's built from something somebody else did. You're probably going to be successful. So if you do sign up for a course and then you realize I don't really like the person, just do the course. Meet the people in the course. And the thing that I've heard, we talked about this with yours, is a lot of times it's not the course. It's the people in the course with you that become your lifelong friends. And if that happens, all those deals are going to happen. You won't worry about the $10,000 you spent on the course. It won't matter. It's the friends that you got from spending that money that could change the entire trajectory of your investing career.
Yeah. And I love what you're saying too, is I'm the person who creates my own result. Like I don't outsource that to whoever created the course that I have thoughts about, right? I get to create that either by the network that I create. I even do this with consults. Like if I have a consult and it's however many $1,000, right? I evaluate that and get that same amount that I would have made from them hiring me in the transformation that I experience and in who I become. So it's really approaching every single mastermind as like, I create my own results. And then we, as the mastermind creators, also have that perspective. How can I guarantee their results? How can I create their results? And when both people take ownership. Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah. How can I help create the confidence in someone else to move forward without regret? Going kind of like circling back on everything we said. Both you and I are in the mindset coaching and real estate investing coaching space. It's how can I create this feeling that like they know what they're doing and that they're comfortable making their own decisions. Maybe they were in a relationship where they didn't have control over their money and now they have control over it. But you have to be really sure you're making a good decision with that. And for all of us with kids or anyone who's planning on having kids or just generational wealth that you want to leave to other relatives, like making the smart choices early and taking more time is what's going to get there. Part of what we talk about in our job in the back end is, can we create the confidence in someone? But confidence comes with being around other people who are doing it. If you've never seen someone who's like you do it, you're not going to think you can do it. There's no example for you, and you have to get to a point where you're there and you're like, wait, that person over there in the gym shorts, 9 units. And they're not counting their doors. They're just like, oh, I have one here. This is how I got them. Very nondescript. I mean, that's the millionaire next door. Most millionaires, nobody knows who they are. Does everybody know that? They have no idea. There's plenty of people who just work their whole life, have like 40 properties, they pass away and someone's like, what? They're still living in the same house. That's what they like to do. I like to upgrade my houses from time to time, and I'm not trying to like live in a mansion. Like I'm good.
Yeah. I love that because I think it speaks to what I would say is the theme of your life in many ways. To me, it feels like just checking your ego at the door and like seeing.
Some people would argue with you about that. But so with that said, though,
I'll take the argument.
People who want to argue with me that I have a big ego, it's not me, it's them. I'm just confident because I work hard to know a lot of stuff and to perfect things. And I'm also confident enough to say, oh, I screwed that one up. It's them who needs to do the work most of the time, because I'm quick to understand. But like you said before, I can make decisions. They're not always the right decisions, but I need to make decisions in order for things to move forward. So if I make a decision, it turns out to be wrong, I'm going to pivot right away. I don't need to have this whole thing like, oh, I have to be right. I screwed that one up, but I'm going to fix it right now instead of fix it, a year later, which was my old way. Well, let me just let it keep going.
It's because you're willing to see, oh, I did screw it up, and that's okay. It's not like it means something massive about me. I don't globalize it to myself.
It's good,
It's
though.
just something
I
I
mean,
did.
yeah, how do you get better if you're not making any mistakes? I mean,
Yeah.
if you think you're perfect and you're never going to make a mistake, you're never really going to achieve that much, because you're going to think you're doing all these great things and everyone's going to be telling you all their other ideas that you're going to pass on. Things are changing. We have to change with them. But again, the model of real estate's the same. There's houses everywhere. There's land everywhere. There's businesses everywhere that contain real estate underneath. You know, our job is, can we figure out the way to build a relationship where we can both feel satisfied with the transaction and we have the money backing and we understand our financing? That's the mindful part of real estate. It's understanding all parts of the game. The person on the other side, the person who's going to give us the money if we need it, and how much does that cost? And is that risky to us? Hard money. You know, does it work for some people? Yeah, but you look, a baby flipper, 15% hard money and 3 points, not a good play right now.
Mm-hmm.
And someone has to tell them, no, you know, don't buy this deal. You're going to regret it. And if we had more people out there, and a lot of them have been on the podcast who are willing to say, like, no, like, this is not a good deal for you. Just because you made it fit in the spreadsheet doesn't make it a good deal. Like, look at the asset with your eyes. It sucks.
And I think that's what makes you a good coach too, because we can find friends for free that will always back us up. But we need someone who's willing to risk the relationship or, you know, hate you because you told me this deal doesn't work, even though I've put hundreds of hours into it or whatever. And I think it's that willingness to be honest. And like you were talking about, transparent in that way too.
Yeah. And to be okay with people who are offended. You know what I mean? The truth offends a lot of people. Yeah. And I don't believe in what people call brutal honesty. I'm not trying to make people feel bad, but if you ask me, is this a good deal? And I say no, and then you try to convince me that it's a good deal and I still say no, my time's done. Yeah. Like, I'm complete. If you don't want to listen to me, it's fine. But don't come back to me later and say, I know it's going to be a bad deal. I'm right. And that's not arrogant to say I'm rarely wrong about that, because I know the business. You know, me, 30 plus years, them, 2 seminars. Mm-hmm. I'm just trying to help. I don't want the deal. You know, that's where people get it. Like, oh, well, you're probably going to get the deal. I'm like, I'll give you $1 million if I get that deal, because I don't want anything to do with it. I don't like the area. I don't like this, you know, nothing. It's just like there's always this out to get you, because some people are. But the more you work on your tribe, I think the better. And I think I've held you long enough on this one. So I appreciate you subbing in to interview me for episode 100. So you have been on the podcast before, but before we hop off my guest episode, tell everybody more about you and your business.
Oh, that's a fun, unexpected question. So
we did such a good job. I mean, we're good friends. I know we're working on things to do together, but I think our alignment is in this mindful life coaching to real estate investing. So tell them what you do.
Amazing. So I help people invest in real estate, whether you've already been investing and we're going to the next level, going from regular to commercial or large multifamily. I just help people become their best selves and grow their real estate portfolio together at the same time using a mindful approach. And I do that one-on-one right now, just working with each individual, helping them see every different area of the deal. Yeah, if that sounds like a fit, I would love to help you out with that. And I'm sure Jonathan will link in the show notes where you can schedule your consult. But absolutely.
And go back and listen to Alyssa's episode. All you have to do is look up her name, Alyssa Holbrook. I can't remember the episode number right now.
I don't know.
It was pretty early though.
Yeah, it was. And another fun way to interface is Alyssa Holbrook Coach on Instagram. And I'm pretty active
you're
there.
Good in the
really
DMs.
Enjoy it. Yeah. As are you, Jonathan.
Well,
do you want to say where people can find you more? Because they know you in the podcast, but like, what about outside of that? How can they work with you more?
I do always talk about the podcast, but if you want to see the mindful part of what I do, it's all on my Instagram at Trust Greene, Greene as an E at the end. That's where it is. And that's like my Instagram stories are always all the meditations in the morning go in the stories because my stories are for myself. If people look at them like, that's awesome. But we've talked about this a lot, like both of our social media, it's like, your kids are out there, you're going to do stuff because that's the kind of thing that we're building. And if you're looking at people like you and I, mindful approach to real estate investing, it's also part of just being yourself.
Yeah.
This is who I am. This is the things that I like to do. I like to watch this show. I like to go walk in the woods. You don't have to be scared that you can't be a successful real estate investor if you also like off-roading on bikes. Why not? It doesn't have to be perfect. Social media doesn't have to be perfect. The more authentic you are in all these things gives people, don't you think it gives people a much better idea of who they're going to interface with, either you or I, by being able to listen. That's why video for podcasts is so great. They can see us.
Yeah.
So if you're listening to this, then you can always go watch it on YouTube. There's the highlight clips there. It's just an easier way, I think, to judge people in advance instead of just 10-second snippets on Instagram of where everything's rosy.
So true and so good. And I love that you are pretty real there. Like
pretty real?
You are real. We're people. We're people that are investing and mentoring people and investing as well. And I think you just find people who speak to your soul, right? I think we connected and we're like, all right, I get you. We're friends. This is good.
But that's why it was so important to meet in person, at BP. That was the first time we met in person. But then it was like, okay, all that, all of our texting and our stuff, that makes sense now. Now it's transformed into what are we going to be able to build together and help each other build, which is what I think a lot of people are doing. A lot of my guests, I want to work on stuff with them, and that'll, come out soon with the coaching program that I'm going to try to launch soon. So I appreciate your time. It's been you were the person I was going to go to do this because I knew we could talk about mindfulness. Maybe it's not the episode that everybody expected, but I hope it was an episode that maybe changes the way you think in 2024 for real estate investing.
So good. Thanks for letting me interview you. What an honor.
I appreciate it. That was the host, Alyssa Holbrook. I'm Jonathan Greene. We'll see you for episode 101 next time. I hope you enjoyed that episode of Zen and the Art of Real Estate Investing with me, Jonathan Greene. And I just want to remind you, and this is always an uncomfortable part, I don't want you to think that I'm begging for you to like, subscribe, follow, do whatever you have to do for the podcast, leave a 5-star review. But if you like the podcast and you think it adds value in the real estate investing sphere, then just do me a personal favor. Like the podcast, follow it, share it when you can with your friends, and be so kind as to write a 5-star review if you believe it deserves a 5-star review up against what else is out there. I would really appreciate it, and I hope you keep listening.